Hey everybody. So last Tuesday, Mark Darrah, a Bioware veteran that has worked at the studio for 24 years and was consulted on for Dragon Age Veilguard, made a video titled "Your $70 Doesn't Buy You Cruelty." In this video, he criticizes gamers for being nasty online to game developers and celebrating things that they should not celebrate, such as layoffs or studio shutdowns. This was of course picked up by game journalists who love this kind of thing because it allows them to do what they've been doing best for the better part of a decade, demonizing gamers and laying the blame on them while completely disregarding the real problems in the industry and holding zero accountability. But we'll get to this aspect of PC Gamer's article in just a second. We're also going to talk about Mark Darrah's claims and this whole issue involving reality and the morality of this so-called cruelty in the gaming space by gamers towards developers when it comes to criticism. First, let me just lay it out from the get-go that actual harassment, personal attacks and threats towards developers or anyone at all online is obviously not okay. It is a despicable act unbefitting of any decent person. However, it's also something that is often widely sensationalized, generalized and misconstrued, made to look like something that it isn't. Words have meanings and we are going to go over that as well. Now, PC Gamer covered Mark's video in this article and we are going to be using it to avoid using any footage from Mark's video, as that's, not always safe from getting claimed. And this way we can also call out any nonsense being shoved in there by the outlet itself, because game journalists love to embellish some things. We're going to start with the main claim in the article that is visible on thumbnails, which deals with how immoral and evil and cruel and etc. it is for gamers to celebrate layoffs. Then we're going to circle back around and go through the rest of the article if you are interested. So let's get in there, shall we? So near the end of the article it reads, "Darrah has a particular and understandable bugbear," by the way, don't ask me what that is, I don't know what it is, "about the kind of fans who grave dance whenever layoffs are announced." Then, quoting Darrah, he says, "When you celebrate layoffs at a studio because the game that you didn't like didn't do that well, you are crossing a line into being cruel, and fundamentally you should have more grace for other human beings." PC Gamer continues with, "That's probably what prompted Darrah to make the video in the first place. Following the lukewarm commercial reception of Dragon Age the Veilguard, the publisher EA laid off a host of senior talent last month, including veterans of both the Dragon Age and Mass Effect series. Reports suggest that over half of the studio was either let go or reassigned elsewhere within EA's studio structure, leaving a skeleton team working on the next Mass Effect." Okay, so here's the deal. When this happens, it isn't a celebration of people getting fired. This is your misconception of the situation. It's much more a celebration of actions finally having consequences. The alternative of letting flops just happen and having nothing change is much worse. Granted, the next game might be another Veilguard for all we know. It depends on who's leading these projects and what their intentions are, and whether or not they learned any lessons from a previous game's flop. But if that happens, then don't be surprised if it flops again and people get fired again, and we once again laugh at what just happened, especially if it goes down the way that it did with Veilguard. What developers like Darrah and journalists like PC Gamer like to forget, since it doesn't suit them, is the highly contentious climate surrounding these game releases. Just a mere couple of weeks before the launch of Veilguard, David Gator and some other current and ex-Bioware developers took to their echo chambers in Blue Sky to insult the ever-living shit out of everyone who was criticizing several aspects of Veilguard, such as how ugly some of these character designs were. And I know people don't like to talk about this, but we have to talk about it because it's so important, it's such a major part of it, which is the obvious ideological pushes, such as limiting character customization when it comes to creating women, but the addition of contemporary unfitting crap like top surgery scars. They didn't even bother to rename those scars as something else, or simply not even name them at all and just throwing them into the body scar section of the character creator. Instead, it was a clear as day piece of contemporary nonsense, and a very disingenuous and hypocritical one at that. If you wish to have more details on why it is so, feel free to check out this video here. It was my 4th video on the channel and I was quite proud of it. It explains why their statement saying that it was about inclusion is a lie, and also why it matters, since the shills were covering for it by saying, "Why do you care? Why does this matter?" etc. You know how it is. So there was already a problem that went even beyond Veilguard, a problem that made Veilguard be more than just a random October release, but a big item in the agenda of those who want to push contemporary socio-political messaging and themes into every big franchise in the AAA AAA industry, an obvious thing that has marked 2024. The failure of Veilguard wasn't just something earned and deserved by its own terrible quality and the way that it even managed to impact the entire Dragon Age brand, but also something important that said, no, these elements don't sell games, this is not what we want. Which is obviously an important message to have acknowledged by the industry. It's the same situation with Ubisoft, for example. The talks about a buyout from Tencent made people celebrate their downfall. This isn't because we are cruel and want to see loads of people out on their ass, it's because this is a company that has been churning out slop with overpriced microtransactions for years now, and refuses to change no matter how much people criticize them. It's a company that told us to get comfortable not owning their games, and then 1 or 2 months later yanked away the crew from their buyer's library to the point where if you wanted to play the game offline, you couldn't. So yes, of course we celebrate when this shit happens. It's all that we can do. I mean, what's the alternative? Be sad? See something good finally happen in the industry where a bad studio gets restructured or shut down or fired so that maybe, just maybe, there's an indication that our dislike of their games was noted and will be addressed in future projects? Why are we supposed to be sad about this? We're not happy that people just got fired, many of which aren't even to blame sometimes, like for example Corinne Bush, arguably the #1 person that should have felt the consequences for what she directed with Veilguard. She ended up failing upwards, getting hired by Wizards of the Coast to work on future projects over there. This doesn't make us happy. Of course it's unfair that she gets to fail upwards and land on her feet, while some other potentially blameless developers in the bottom of the food chain who were just following orders end up in the street. But I am not Jesus Christ Superstar. I cannot fix that for you. Gamers are not to blame for this aspect of the unfairness of this industry. We're not happy about the injustice, we're happy that a failure was regarded as a failure, instead of as a victory to pave the way to future failures. You, as developers, are more than welcome to make your voices heard and point out that hypocrisy and injustice and mistreatment along with us. Many of us will join you. Big channels on this platform will even give you interviews to let you open up about this stuff and pursue at least some level of justice or exposition of this unfair treatment. Hell, you can even do it anonymously if you don't want your face and name out there ruining your future. But, you know, that's about it, man. Like, that's it. Making videos talking about this shit and pinning it on the gamers is going to do nothing for you. First, it's totally unreasonable and misdirected. Second, we frankly just don't give a fuck. To be brutally honest with you, like, I can speak for myself and surely many will agree with me here, my conscience is crystal clear. I know I'm not personally attacking anyone, and I know that I hold no contempt for individuals. And above all, I know I am not celebrating people being out on their ass like some sociopath. I am celebrating a terrible game failing terribly and the industry acknowledging it as a failure instead of letting that problem fester and go infect the Mass Effect franchise as well. At least now there's a chance that Bioware will carry on existing, but if the same exact team was just left there to work on the next Mass Effect, the same way that they worked on Veilguard, without their mistakes being addressed at all, then you can bet your sweet nuts that Bioware would be turned into a fucking storage closet the moment that the next Mass Effect released. We have no arbitrary power here, we're just the audience. You simply don't have the power to make us automatically buy and like whatever is made. Studios have to get back to understanding that their job is to make games that we like so that they can make sales, instead of games that they want to push on us with their personal ideals. That's not a video game anymore, that's a lecture or a piece of propaganda with video game mechanics attached. And once again, just to make sure that it's clear, celebrating a game failing and the studio undergoing layoffs is simply thanks to the fact that there's an acknowledgement that a really bad game was made and that the message was received, and there's some level of action being taken to make sure that it doesn't happen again, even if it's not guaranteed. Does it suck that the higher-ups are probably going to land on their feet? Yes, of course it does. It sucks for you and it sucks for us too, because it means that whoever made these terrible games, they still have their jobs. You know, some of them are working on Ghost of Yotai. Like I said, the director went to work on Wizards of the Coast. This means that the problem is not culled. It's simply culled from Bioware, but it's not culled from the industry. The problem is still going to remain, and we're still going to see games coming out that probably look and act the way that Veilguard did. But you know, at the end of the day, it's like one problem at a time. And any developer is more than welcome to join us in protesting the fact that these higher-ups who cause the most damage are the ones who are landing on their feet, while the other ones, you know, the lower-rung developers, are probably struggling at home trying to find a job somewhere. Feel free to join up together with us, you know, protest with us. Maybe together we can actually make a change in the industry. But that's about it. Making videos like the one that Darrah did, or like this article right here, trying to pin the blame on gamers for celebrating this and celebrating that, it's just pointless. It's stupid. It goes nowhere. It goes absolutely nowhere, and it ensures that the actual problems remain in the industry. Just ahead of that, the article mentions that the layoffs at Bioware felt like EA was gutting a studio because of having no idea of what to do with it, and that boots on the ground were paying the price for poor leadership, and that this is sadly the case in most industries. Quoting Michael Dowse, Baldur's Gate 3 publishing director, that on a pirate ship they would toss the captain overboard. And absolutely there is truth to that, but here's the thing. Gamers didn't fire those 100 plus employees. EA did. We would have been more than fine if it was just the higher-ups getting canned, because we know that that's where most of the blame is. The writing staff and the director would have sufficed to give people peace of mind that the next Mass Effect was going to at least be free of the incompetence that infected Veilguard, and that there were at least some consequences for the utter failure and destruction of the Dragon Age franchise, something that they keep gaslighting people on by pretending like it was actually a success and only the chuds hated it and made it fail because of a targeted hate campaign. This is why people celebrate layoffs, because it's the direct opposite of this delusional bullshit gaslighting that some of these developers and game journalists, like the ones from Inverse, engage in online. It's like a smackdown of reality. Alas, it's not us in charge of EA, it's not us dictating who gets fired, who lands on their feet, and who now has to struggle looking to find a job in a damaged industry. It's EA, so go complain to them, and again, feel free to join us and complain together. We don't like this stuff either. It's not a staple that gamers celebrate firings and shutdowns. Look at the uproar when Microsoft shut down Tango Gameworks. Look at the uproar when just a couple of days ago NetEase fired some developers from Marvel Rivals. Look at the hatred that EA earned for itself for being the Grim Reaper of studio shutdowns around 10 years ago. Look at the uproar when they shut down Visceral when they were such a prominent and talented studio with so much potential. What's the difference between these three examples and Bioware? Well, the difference is that these three examples were good studios that did good work and got damaged because of greedy fuckery in the industry. Bioware is not, and just delivered one of the biggest embarrassments of gaming. Sorry, it just is what it is. Alright, now we're going to circle back to the beginning of the article in case you guys are interested in the rest of it being covered as well. If not, thanks for watching so far, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Like the video if you enjoyed it. But if you're still here, then put on your seatbelts because it's getting spicy. We're going to start by taking a little aside here. This wasn't claimed by Darrah, so it's not directed at him, it's directed at whoever wrote this garbage, this article. The more toxic elements of video game fandom are much more of an issue for developers than some players might think. In a 2023 GDC survey of game developers, 91% of respondents said that abuse from players was a problem. And if we're being honest, we've all seen some people go way OTT at developers online. The problem feels even more pronounced at the bigger budget end of the industry, where certain folk seem to feel that if they've paid their money, that entitles them to open season on the people who made it. So, you know, we'll get to the stupidity in regards to the big budget thing in just a little bit. For now, let's address the big scary number, the 91% of devs that claim abuse from players is a problem. This is why game journalists love these kinds of videos from developers. It gives them an excuse to go into the treasure chest of bullshit and bring up stuff like this. Games media laps it up using these figures from GDC while leaving out what GDC is and how it has become a breeding ground for activists in the industry, putting on presentations like these. And cis, white, gender, able-bodied man as a default. Video games are political. The way we make video games is political. The way that we teach our students to make games is political. Jesus Christ. If you're an audio listener, do know that the PowerPoint is in all caps and the political word is in red. Then there's oh so much more from just last year's GDC conference going deep into DEI. This is something everyone should see. I will be sliding these through the screen as I talk right now so as to not read them out and make the video 2 hours long, but this is a perfect display of how politically compromised this industry is. People like to say that it's all bullshit, it's not there, it's not real, there is no such thing, and we're all just making it up and rage baiting. But that couldn't be farthest from the truth. It's deeply ingrained into this industry, and this is why when an entire studio gets shit canned, or half of it, people don't really feel all that bad. I mean, look at this garbage. And no, this isn't a personal attack, I'm not calling out any names, nor am I being cruel, I'm being real. Too often these days, reality is misconstrued for cruelty. The fact is that these people are a specific type of people, you know what I mean. I don't even have to use a word for it, you get what I'm referring to. In fact, trying to use words for an accurate description in itself would be more challenging. If anything, it's easier to just say something like SJWs or activists or Karens and leave it at that, because in reality we'd have to go deeply into just how despicable some of these people are, or at the very least, some of the things that they push are. We'd have to go into their hostility, their hypocrisy, their lies, their agendas, the things that they support. And that's just a mess, so those terms will have to suffice for now. But it's obvious what I'm talking about. These are the people who have Kim Belair, Sweet Baby Inc. CEO, come over and host some of these talks to learn from her. A woman who has gone online to drop actually racist comments which she was never held accountable for, by the way. Her only downfall was the quality of the games she worked on being so terrible, the writing being so atrocious, and their conduct online being so abrasive and anti-gamer that it resulted in a whole uproar to boycott anything that this studio touched, or rather this consultant company, leading to smaller new games from smaller studios being heavily impacted. This is what ruined them in the end, not her actual actions and comments. Everyone just pretends like that doesn't matter while holding other people accountable for far less. But even if we were to take all of this away, even if we were to discount how terrible and how despicable Sweet Baby Inc. is as a company, not just their values, but also the quality of their work, even if we were to take away all of this stuff that has to do with their terrible reputation, these are still people who want to listen to the owner of this company. They want to learn from her, because their goals is not to become better developers, their goals is not to make games that people want to play, their goals is just to learn how to be as abrasive, as intrusive, and as horrible as possible to piss us off, and to take down as many established and liked AAA franchises and IPs before they get fired or the company shuts down. These are deeply biased people against gamers, and more than that, they are weak people whom a mere breeze would figuratively knock over. So I'm sorry if I look at this figure where 91% of these people say that abuse from players is a problem. It literally means nothing to me. It's like wearing a blue t-shirt and walking into a meeting of guys who love red t-shirts and then being surprised that the guys in red t-shirts start booing me. In fact, what shocks me the most about this figure is that somehow there's still 9% of normal people that didn't get swallowed up by the echo chamber yet. Okay, now let's get on to the rest of the article. So the main claims that we can see from Mark Darrah, and the article circled the theme of unfair criticism and straight up attacks, starting with: the video is called "Your $70 Doesn't Buy You Cruelty" and sees Darrah address issues as diverse as players celebrating layoffs to the kind of persistent personal harassment and threats that can result in the courts having to get involved. The former producer makes clear that he's not talking about folk criticizing a game that they've paid good money for or telling others that they don't like it, which feels like it doesn't really need to be said, but I guess you have to be explicit about this stuff on the internet. You know, fellas, you know you're fucked when a journalist is complaining about people being explicit about what they mean. So the thing is that the vast majority of discourse is folks criticizing a game that they've paid good money for or telling others that they don't like the game. The instances where there's actual personal harassment and threats to the level described here are incredibly rare, and thank God for that. That's obviously not civilized behavior. Thing is though, we don't condone it or support it either. You can find like the chuddiest of content creators, like for example Endymion, someone with over 300,000 subscribers and who is openly and proudly conservative, always making making videos about this kind of stuff, and even he makes sure to tell people to not harass anyone that he may be covering. And if you want even bigger than that, you have Nerderotic and Geeks and Gamers, for example, who cover a lot of this same stuff but in the industry of movies and TV shows, and they never harass anyone nor condone harassment. Another issue here is what constitutes harassment or attack. This is a big one because to some people the simple use of profanity in a very heated critique of a game or a studio is enough for them to take issue with, but no matter how much they may want to classify that as harassment, it simply isn't. And then the worst part is that this stuff gets lumped together with actual harassment. I mean, this article itself is doing it where it's bringing up instances where these courts have to get involved, which again are very rare instances of crazy people being crazy, something that isn't exclusive to game developers. Anyone who is famous or has an online presence will have to deal with these kinds of people. It's inevitable. And this isn't a justification of any kind, of course, it's just addressing reality. If I started fucking up the audio in my videos or being lazy with my scripts and I got comments calling that out, even if some of them weren't courteous and would straight up tell me that my content is dog shit, I couldn't lump it all together with personal attacks or threats, know what I mean? And this is sadly what happens whenever this stuff is brought up in these cases. It's not the first time and it will not be the last. It already happened with an article by Inverse back in December in an interview with Veilguard's director Corinne Bush, where the blame for the game's underwhelming sales was pinned on a targeted harassment campaign without any evidence at all whatsoever of this supposed campaign. And there was also the situation with Square Enix where, in order to justify questionable changes to their harassment policies, these journalists bring up extreme cases like that one time where an event had to be cancelled because of an unhinged stalker. These things happened, they are real, we can talk about them, but we can't bring them up as examples when we're talking about video game discourse because it's misrepresentative of the actual situation. So let's just clear it up and make it as crystal as possible with this. Yes, crazy people exist online. Yes, some gamers are total assholes or immature and they know no boundaries. They will legitimately waste hours of their day to look up some developer on social media and send them messages or comments or replies insulting them. No, this doesn't at all compose the majority or even any sizable portion, to be honest, of the gaming community discourse online, and most of all, none of this should invalidate the real issues that are actually being talked about. Stuff like this honestly just comes across as people trying to escape accountability by making up this big evil strawman and then saying that the big evil strawman has no leg to stand on and shouldn't be listened to. And lines like "this isn't about folks criticizing a game or telling others that they don't like it" comes across as weak cop-outs because they are very vague. They're basically there so that if someone says, "Hey man, I don't agree with the unhinged people who attack devs personally, I just think that this game is really bad and people should be held accountable for it, and that's what most people are saying," then they can say, "Well, this isn't about people criticizing a game, I already said that, that's fine, harassment however is not," and then bam, the discourse is shut down. You can go look at Inverse's article interviewing Corinne Bush for yourselves. That's pretty much what happened. No degree of accountability at all was held. No piece of criticism was brought up or acknowledged. No evidence of any harassment came up. Absolutely nothing. The entire thing was just pinned on an imaginary hate campaign, and that was that. So if you recall, in that previous paragraph, the article claimed that the problem feels even more pronounced at the bigger budget end of the industry, where certain folk seem to feel that if they've paid their money, that entitles them to open season on the people who made it. And this is just such a disgustingly disingenuous statement that once again pushes this narrative that there's a fucking hunt on the individuals who are making video games, so long as we've paid for them. It's open season, open the gates. They are misconstruing and doing precisely what I just referred to, where the simple use of profanity or a more irate, dare I say, angry review is a problem and is exacerbated to come across as an attack. And if this isn't what they're doing, then they need to start showing receipts to this apparent epidemic of devs being targeted. Otherwise, this is all just bullshit. And the concept of money is so out of touch too. There's barely any difference whatsoever in big budget games and lower budget games anymore. Gamers are accustomed to paying $60 to $70 for video games right now, no matter if they are AAA or AA. This is just what games cost now. And even if sometimes we may see a release being a bit cheaper for some reason, like personally I paid €50 for Lies of P at launch, and also for Banishers Ghosts of New Eden at launch as well. It was $50, and I have no idea why. The fact is that it isn't just because of an extra $10 or $20 that are going to make people go from reasonable leveled criticism to this supposed open season on developers. The reason why this is more pronounced in the big budget end of the industry is because it's the big budget end of the industry that is caked with activists. Activists who like to push agendas into their video games that tarnish their quality and who like to take to social media and demonize their customers, telling us that they hate us, or that we're tourists, or that we're incels or bigots, or straight up saying that they'd like to punch us in the face, or hell, going as far as to say that the world would be a better place without us, and all because of having opinions that don't match up with theirs. This is the reality of the gaming scape in the AAA industry out here in the West. It's people, you know, unhinged people, narcissists, who never had to fucking work for their positions in these companies, and who are endlessly protected. No matter what they do, they can do whatever the fuck they want. They can insult whoever they want, they can alienate whoever they want, it doesn't matter, so long as what they are saying has a specific political leaning that is approved by their superiors. Basically, gamers are now seen as chuds just for wanting a good fucking video game every once in a while, so basically you can demonize gamers all that you want. It's ironic that they use the phrase open season when it comes to developers, when in reality it's open season on your goddamn customers. Those are the ones that you can demonize and talk shit about. You can go as far as you want to, and nobody's ever going to come to you and tell you that you're fired. The only way you get fired is if you get lumped together with a bunch of other developers when the game flops and the studio has to restructure. This is where the gaming discourse is at its most toxic and damaged, but it's got nothing to do with money. Cheaper games usually made by indie developers don't catch as much shit because generally they are better games. Not even necessarily mechanically better, it's just that people know what to expect from them. And the number one thing that they do best is they don't have to push agendas in their video games. Their number one concern is with making a good game that people will like, and the only thing standing in the way of that is a smaller or at times even non-existent budget or the lack of experience and additional workforce. Both of which are things that gamers can understand and be empathetic towards so long as they know what they're getting into and weren't scammed with false advertising. These are flaws that we can tolerate and even accept. However, when a game is compromised by ideological injections, by activism, or by devs being hostile towards us, that is an entirely different situation that doesn't inspire much empathy or tolerance at all. And if you look at Eastern games coming out recently, people are happily paying the big bucks for them, and there's no heavy criticism or hostility because the games are simply good. Things are much simpler with Eastern games right now, especially from China and Korea, and this is because so far it's untainted. These are studios mainly focused on making games that please their demographics. They simply look at the market and the place that their project is supposed to have in it, they see what it is that people want the most out of it, and they make it and they release it. No added bullshit, no agendas trying to change that demographic, no agendas trying to diversify that space, no agendas trying to push specific political messages or views or whatever tucked away in the game. Nothing. Nobody coming in and going, oh, I don't know about that, that design is not very good, this is not very progressive. Nobody coming in with, oh, no, these characters, they are too attractive, we need to do better, this is not good for society. Nobody coming in with, oh, where's the diversity, we need to achieve these numbers here, these quotas, we must achieve them, the diversity, please, we must achieve them, let's go, try to find a place for it in the game. There's none of it. Nothing. Just a good-ass game for us to chew on. Pretty much how the Western AAA industry used to be before letting politics come in and fuck everything up. People are happy to pay for this stuff. No one is being emboldened to attack these developers just because we had to pay $60 to $70 to play Black Myth Wukong or Stellar Blade, for example. Why aren't these people talking about that? Like, why aren't they correlating this instead of just making these stupid theoretical generalizations where gamers feel entitled to attack developers just because they spent $60 or $70 on a game? What are we to them? Fucking psychopaths? Jesus. The next part deals with misdirected criticism. Darrah says that if we are mad at Ubisoft, for example, then be mad at Ubisoft. Express our anger to Ubisoft or whatever studio that made the game, but that we cross a line if we start being cruel about it. And we don't need to go out of our way to cause harm to other people because of a video game. This is all pretty obvious stuff. There's nothing at all that I can think of that negates this, and I still don't know what he means with cruelty in this case. PC Gamer also adds that there's also the fact that whatever someone dislikes about a game, pinning that on one individual or even a group of developers is apparently wild and shows an ignorance of how these massive projects are brought together. Finishing in a quote from Darrah saying, "All of this isn't to say that you aren't allowed to have your own opinions, to not like the things that you don't like. It's specifically to point out that you being angry at a specific person, you attacking a specific person, is often misdirected." And that Darrah also accepts that as someone who held an executive producer role on Anthem, he is a fairer target for some of this ire, and that it's better for those in leadership roles to get an unpleasant complaint or message than some junior designer who probably had nothing to do with the decision making that led to the issue, and that this is apparently obvious, but it doesn't seem to be understood by many. This is their words in the article. Keyword many. Pardon my French, but what the fuck are you talking about in this entire diarrhea of words? This is what people already do. This is how it works. People, look at Ubisoft for example, right? You don't see people dragging individual members of Ubisoft. You don't see people looking up their little developers and sending them shit. People talk shit about Ubisoft as a whole. Once again, going back to the chuddiest of content creators, as seen per people online at least, take a look at Asmongold. He has been covering the downfall of Ubisoft in real time. Anytime something happens, he talks about it on stream and then it's uploaded as a clip onto YouTube. He's been there for videos pointing out inconsistencies with the cultural stuff. He's been there for the blunder with the Tory Gate. He's been there for the shrine destruction. He's been there for the release date thing. He's been there for everything. Not once did he go look up like the marketing director, for example, at Ubisoft and go, "Yeah, man, hey, Ferguson, you fucked up, man. Yeah, you're shit. You're just shit, man. Yeah, guys, I mean, I don't know. It's not even a question. It's not even a question, guys. I mean, Ferguson, he's fucking shit. He's the worst. Somebody please send Ferguson some threats online, guys, please. I mean, we have to fix the industry, guys. I mean, it's not even a question. Yeah, anyway, yeah." Do you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't do that shit. He looks at Ubisoft fucking up and he laughs at Ubisoft. This is what everybody does. And if this is too much, like, let's say that you work at one of these studios. Let's say that you work at Bioware, for example, and you just hate seeing people come online and calling your game shit and calling your studio dog piss, whatever they say online. You just have to try and stay away from it. Like, I know this sucks and I'm sorry, but it is what it is. You have to try and stay away from it because it just is what it is in these cases, guys. If you make a really, really, really bad game, you need to stay away from certain locations on the internet where the discourse in regards to your really, really bad game is going to be unfiltered. That's the only solution. It's absolutely unrealistic to expect people to not be inflammatory when they're talking about a video game or when they're talking shit about a studio as a whole and not targeting personal attacks within the studio. This is once again far from what harassment is. Personal attacks and threats are personal attacks and threats. Words have to have their due meaning. And if someone on the internet is going, "Holy shit, who the fuck wrote this garbage, kindergartners?" that does not qualify. I know it's rude, I know it's probably difficult to listen to, but it's not harassment. You're just kind of getting roasted as a collective. And in regards to this last paragraph, I also have no clue what the fuck PC Gamer is talking about. People aren't retarded to go look up a junior developer and blame them for a game's issues. People generally look up and blame higher-ups, such as game directors and lead developers. So for example, if the writing is really bad, they're going to look at the writers. If the music sucks, they're going to look at the composer. If the general game is terrible, they're going to point at the director. And there is absolutely nothing inconsistent or wrong with that. Nobody's targeting the janitor for the cringy dialogue in Veilguard. Darrah finishes with, "Be aware that this stuff is carefully scrutinized, not just by the social media teams, but also by the teams themselves, arguably in a lot of cases to too much of a degree. The team is listening, I would say often too much, to what you're yelling about and complaining about." My brother, the team is listening too much? I would say the team isn't listening nearly enough. I don't know how someone can be listening way too much to us and then somehow still end up giving us terrible results. Like, I don't even know how this can be claimed in regards to projects that he has personal experience with, such as Dragon Age Veilguard, when one of the decisions made was to disregard player choice, story and lore for Veilguard. How is it possible that this was the move that was made when listening too much to what we yell and complain about? If this was true, that would have been the very first thing not to do in the production of the Dragon Age game. Like, I'm sorry, but this is just not it. Discarding the core elements of a franchise in the production of a sequel? Like, it isn't even in the production of a new game in the series, it's a direct sequel. This already happened before with Mass Effect 3. It disregarded so much player choice and gave people a generic 3-color ending. Are you sure that the team listened too much to our supposed yelling and complaining? Because I would wager that if the team did, they would have known that this was a bad call from the beginning, and that's just one example of many where Dragon Age Veilguard takes an absolutely stupid turn or makes a decision that is antithetical to the franchise. And that's not to mention the issues with the politics in the game. You can't possibly claim that you're listening too much to what people are complaining about and then shove in lethal doses of the thing that is constantly complained about whenever a game injects it into it. Actually, Dragon Age Veilguard doubled down on this aspect. Like, how can you be listening to people and then double down on one of the things that people are complaining about all the time? You are entitled to your opinion, ends Darrah. You are entitled to be angry about a game that you bought, you paid good money for it, but try to remember that it's just a game. Even more importantly, when you are expressing your complaints, stay away from cruelty. Stay away from targeting individual people. Stay away from trying to cause harm. Stay away from celebrating harm done to actual human beings. When you are personally attacking individual devs, you are crossing a line and you're probably attacking the wrong person anyway. On the surface, there is nothing wrong with this statement. The problem is that his definition of an attack and his definition of a harassment is not the same as the actual definition of these words, and his interpretation of us celebrating a harm is also completely just off it's off of the orbit. It's not even in the same fucking galaxy as what is actually going on, what we're actually celebrating whenever we see actions having consequences. I'm fully in agreement that anyone going out of their way to target individual developers and harass them, threaten them, dox them, or even actually harm them, of course, are completely unhinged. These are not actions that normal sane people commit nor condone, but these are obviously extreme situations, and what actually happens when a game flops and people laugh and even celebrate whenever these companies start scrambling after being shown that thing that we've been trying to tell them over and over and over for years, which is that we don't want modern contemporary political garbage or predatory monetization in our games or broken releases, etc. All of this stuff, it is simply not harassment, and celebrating when consequences are finally had for their actions is not celebrating harm. It's literally just a natural consequence of what is happening. If people have to choose between celebrating that a company is getting fucked after fucking with us versus letting the company continue to be how it is and letting them continue to blame us and letting them continue to make garbage content that is going to result in an even bigger flop and even more firings, then I'm sorry, but I'm going to celebrate the layoffs. I'm going to celebrate them. I'm going to be happy. I'm not going to like pop champagne or anything, but I'm going to see it and I'm going to go, this is a good thing. The people on the street are not a good thing. I'm not celebrating that, but that's not my fault. That's not our fault. As gamers, that's not our fault. That's the company's fault. And we criticize the company as well, all the fucking time. So basically, if you guys want, we can click together and, you know, fight this common enemy, but what you cannot expect is to, you know, keep blaming us for everything. A game fails and it's our fault. It's their fault, they didn't buy it. Even though we tell them all the time, hey guys, this sucks, we don't want this in our games, please don't put this in the games, please don't put this in our games. You can put it in your games if you want to, but don't put it in our games. Like, don't bring it into the triple. It doesn't make sense, guys. This stuff doesn't make sense. This is niche stuff. Niche stuff needs to be for niche games. Small games, small budget, less risk. You make whatever you want to make, you put as many non-binary characters as you want to put in. The game comes out, we don't give a fuck because it's not for us. Somebody else, you know, if they want this modern audience type of stuff, they can go and they can buy it. And then if the game is successful, they can make another one. And if the game fails, it's not like a big impact on the company. It's like a small impact. It's like a punch in the gut. Like, instead of being, you know, your balls being ripped out of you from underneath, it's just a little punch in the gut. Like, I told you not to do that. You know what I mean? Whereas if you put this garbage into the AAA space and the games come out and we are all looking at it like, what the fuck is this? It's like getting your balls ripped out from underneath, like upwards, like, you know, like all the way up. It's painful, it fucks everything up, it'll fuck up your Tuesday, I'll tell you that. So I don't even know what the fuck I was saying at this point. Basically, do whatever you want to do with your games, don't put it in the big franchises because it doesn't make any financial sense. We're saying this for years, you know, we're saying this like, hey man, this is stupid, look at Disney, do you see Disney? Not working out for them, how's it going to work out for you? And then, you know, the games come, you guys do it anyway, the games come out, the games suck, and you blame us, like, the fucking chuds. Why can't they accept us? Why can't they accept these games? Why can't they accept this garbage that we're putting into the games? You know, it's what it is. And now we see the consequences happening to the company and we're going, good, you know, hey, we warned you, hey, we said so, you know, but this is good. Now Bioware at least is not going to commit the same mistake with Mass Effect that they committed with Veilguard. There's a chance for Mass Effect where if this didn't happen, there very likely wasn't. And that now it's our fault as well. Like, please stop blaming us for everything. Stop pinning the blame on us for every little thing. If you guys want, you have a good ally in us, because guess what? We don't like EA either. We don't like these big rich pieces of dog fuck up top, like Andrew Wilson saying that, oh, you know, Veilguard failed because it didn't have enough microtransactions. Do you think we like reading this? Do you not see the articles from not articles, but the videos from people on our side of things criticizing Andrew Wilson for being that stupid? Do you not see what happened the entirety of the last generation of consoles, where we kept fighting and fighting and fighting against predatory monetization? We are here, we are on your side technically, you just have to shift your perspective and stop blaming us for reacting to the fuck-ups of the industry, because that's what we're doing. We're not eating the slop and then we're reacting to what happens after that slop. When you really think about it, we don't really have that much power. The only power we have is to not buy something and to criticize it. Even when it comes to like big channels like Asmongold, for example, like what happened with the KCD developers saying that they were afraid of big channels like his or whatever. That only happens because people resonate with Asmongold and other channels, and they resonate because there is a big rising problem that's been, you know, building up for years and years and years. But anyway, sorry about ranting. That was the end of the article and therefore the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new, and take care of yourself. I'll see you guys on the next one.